Hello, podcast listener, and welcome to this episode of JJ Meets World featuring Scott Ecker. He is a Disney expert. He is a Disney fanatic. He himself has dressed up like Walt Disney on several occasions. We take a deep dive into all of the things Disney's done, from films to innovation to theme parks. Plus, I talk about one of the saddest moments of my life. So we get the happiest place on earth and the saddest day of my life. All of this and so much more on this episode of JJ Meets World. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Today, the day of this recording, I went to the Kirkin o' the Tartan at the First Presbyterian Church in Fargo. What that is when Scotland came under British rule, they said you can't have your tartans anymore. And it was a way you discerned your clan from another clan. So if I walked up and I'm wearing Gordon Tartan and I see a guy in a field and he's also got the Gordon Tartan, part of the same clan.
We're not enemies. I'm not going to take my claymore to his skull.
Correct. But the English said, no more. You can't have that. That identifies you as Scottish. You're not Scottish anymore. You're English. And so people would secretly wear a little swatch of their tartan underneath their clothing. And there'd be a particular time during the religious ceremony of the week at church where they would they'd reach into their coat or their shirt or under their, stockings, whatever it happens to be.
Right.
And they would touch that piece of tartan, and that would be blessing their clan, blessing their family. And so we continue that tradition today. And the Presbyterian Church has a very rich Scottish heritage. A lot of Scots were Presbyterian. And so once a year, they invite a whole bagpipe band in, and they have a blessing of the tartans. They have Highland dancers.
A lot of anti-English sentiment that runs very high.
So much. In fact, I was just chatting with the elders of the church and down with King George. Yes. Yes. But it made me think of a moment in that church, and I'm not a church guy.
You're not.
I don't go to church even on the high holidays. I'm going for specific events. A christening. Is that something that they do in church? Is that what they do?
Yeah.
I mean, they baptize.
Baptism. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been to an adult baptism.
You go to weddings, you go to funerals.
Yeah. But I can't tell you the last time I went to a church wedding, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
A lot of almost all the funerals I go to are in churches, but most weddings I go to in the last 5-6 years, including my own.
How killer would a destination funeral in Vegas be, though?
Oh, and it's got to happen.
Yeah.
It's got to happen.
Yeah.
So I was reminded in there, and this is where this intro takes a hard left, of the loneliest moment of my entire life. I was brought back to it during this ceremony today. When I was 19, my dad died. I had a 6-month bout with cancer. He lost that battle. It was the first time I've ever been involved in planning of a funeral. And one of the things we knew we wanted to do with the funeral was we wanted to have a bagpiper there. Not because my dad was way into his Scottish heritage, but it meant something to his parents, and it meant something to just be connected to that heritage, especially as we say goodbye. And Amazing Grace on the bagpipes is like no other. Now, this church is an old Gothic cathedral. It's all brick and big iron hanging lights and stained glass windows. The ceilings have got to be like 50 feet tall. It's a very like, oh, feeling to a church.
The acoustics were great.
Amazing. So the loneliest I've ever been, my dad's funeral ends and we cremated the body, so there's no casket to carry out. So the bagpiper leads us out. So it's the bagpiper, a soul bagpiper, playing Amazing Grace in this gigantic church filled with people. I mean, there had to have been 300 people there. And then I stood up and I walked behind the bagpiper, and my mom and my sister were behind me, and they had each other to rely on. I walked by myself from one end of the church to the other, listening to this and sobbing my eyes out. I remember the very last pew on the end was a gentleman named Steve Stark, Gwen Stark, previous guest. It was her husband, and he's the only human being who reached out and patted me on the back as we went by. And oh my God, that moment of tenderness from another human being means so much. But that's the loneliest I have ever felt in my life, was taking that walk and knowing that it's just me right here. I'm surrounded by people, but right now everybody's looking at me. I'm not in control of the situation. It's not like when I'm on stage and I'm like, hey everyone, la la la. I was the most vulnerable I think I've ever been. I felt so lonely. So today, when the bagpipe band starts playing Amazing Grace, I had some tears that were shed.
Takes you back to the time where you officially became the man of the house.
Right, exactly. Now, that being said, there's one more musical moment involved in my dad's funeral. So 250, 300 people pour out of the Presbyterian church, and they take a 1.5 block walk down the same street that the church is on to an event center in downtown Fargo, the Avalon, where we had the reception afterwards. So I'm greeting hands, and you're greeting people, shaking hands. It's just going on and on and on. And a car goes by really slow, blaring, "She blinded me with science." And so it's inappropriate. It was so loud that you had to kind of stop your conversation and listen to this thing until it was long enough away where it didn't muffle your conversation. So then it comes by a second time. And at this point, I've started the walk and I've got some friends with me. A third time, this jerk drives by playing "She Blinded Me with Science," doing a slow roll past 300 mourners. Phil Lund, who's a previous guest of the show as well, and for every time that Phil's ever frustrated me, this is exactly why I stay friends with him. He goes, "Hold on," and runs into the middle of the street. This car screeched to stop. He slams his fists on the hood of the car and goes, "My friend's dad just died. Get out of here." And this guy squeals and takes off. That was probably one of the moments where I knew, like, I just went from feeling the most lonely I ever have because I feel vulnerable, I feel all by myself, to knowing that someone's got my back, even when I don't ask for it. And so the back and forth between those two emotions in one day are the defining moments of the day I said goodbye to my dad. And I relived those today. No one was blaring She Blinded Me with Science, but I did put it on Spotify when I was driving by, just because sometimes you got to take the good with the bad.
What do you think was going through this dude's head? Like, hey, there's a big group of people here. I should bother them.
Maybe he's thinking, I'm lonely. I'd like some attention. Just a different type of loneliness.
Right. And why that song in particular?
That's a great question.
You know?
Did he only have the single in there? Was that the problem? It's such a random song to include.
See, now what if he has a backstory to that song, just like that taxi driver had to the soundtrack to the Titanic, and he's like, "I'm dealing with my own stuff, man.
My dad's dying right now, and science can't save him. My dad's been blinded by an accident in a science lab."
You know, I know you've always been very involved with the St. Andrew Society, which your family has been in, and you've carried the what's it called, the
Claymore.
The Claymore. Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought that procession had a name to it. I know the sword is a claymore.
Yeah, I mean, it
kicks off the event. Right?
It's like essentially it's a parade.
Do you have? Do you recall your father's funeral every time you hear bagpipe music, or specifically Amazing Grace?
No. In fact, I think there's a lot of great covers of Amazing Grace, but hearing it in that space, is what really brought it back.
Right.
In fact, if you listen to the soundtrack for the, I'm going to say 1994 Mel Gibson hit film Maverick, there is a great cover of Amazing Grace in there that's kind of like a country western version of it that I really love. But I love that. And I don't think of Scottish music, like bagpipe music. I had it at my own wedding.
Right.
And I see that as more a connection to my heritage. And like I said, my dad was never had bagpipe music. And I remember when I was old enough to be forced to go to the St. Andrew's banquet with my grandmother instead of him having to go.
Right.
And he's like, good, it's JJ's problem now.
Right. So can I guess the way you plan on connecting our interview today with Scott Ecker is that he shares the same first name as Scottish music does?
Oh, no, not even close.
Okay.
I was thinking about, I only saw the movie Brave once and I thought it was a piece of garbage, but it's a Disney movie, and that's how I thought I'd connect it to Scott. And maybe he could give me a further appreciation, because I'm going to talk to Scott a lot about, if there's one thing I think of Scott as an authority of, it's Disney.
Yeah.
This guy knows it inside and out. I will bring up the time I out-Disneyed him, though, much to his chagrin, I'm sure.
There's got to be some way we can have you two compete here on the show with a Disney off.
No.
Maybe I can look up, what I'll do is from time to time I'll look up a piece of obscure trivia and see, hey,
just throw it.
Guys, I have a Disney question for you.
I would prefer if you'd say, JJ, you get a chance to answer it. Scott, you get a chance to answer it. Because if it's a buzz-in or something like that, I know he's going to win. I rarely will say that somebody is more of an authority on something that I enjoy, but he is without a doubt.
Well, we're gonna test out your expertise a little bit, but I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm a Disney fan, but I am not an aficionado in the way you two are.
You don't get Disney aficionado in the mail?
Although
it's
technically,
Mickey Mouse smoking a cigar.
I guess technically you could say I am now, since they own Marvel.
Okay.
So I guess technically, yes, there's a part of the Disney family that I am obsessed with.
Okay. This interview, we kind of bounce all over the place, but we touch a little bit on improv, and we touch, on Disney. We touch on theater. Scott's a guy I've known since he was in high school. And so I think this will be a lot of fun.
Scott is also currently directing the next show at Theater B right now. At the time of this recording, which they just finished their first week of rehearsals. So that's we're excited to see. We'll talk a little bit about that today too, but more on that if you live locally. Catch the last shorts at Theater B.
And for those of you who want to know, my favorite dance is the stanky leg. Podcast go.
JJ Meets World.
Welcome to the studio, Scott Tiberius Ecker.
Yep.
It's good to see you.
You too.
Thank you very much. So let's get this right off the bat. Walt Disney's a sham. He stole everything from UB iWorks. I pretty much hit all the nails on the head, right?
Well, they wouldn't be anything without the other, as we saw during UB iWorks' 5-year run as a solo studio, where he created, classics like Flip the Frog and Willy Whopper and the comic color cartoons that everyone is aware of.
This is exactly why I knew this discussion was going to be good. At one point, Tucker's going to throw out some random trivia.
Oh, perfect.
And it's going to be, he's going to throw a question to me, then I'll throw a question to you. If I can't answer it, you can take it, and vice versa.
JJ is
but
very
it's not buzzing
proud
based.
of his Disney bona fides.
Yes.
He's a little threatened by you.
Okay.
I will freely admit, there is nobody in this community who knows the works of the Walt Disney Company better than Scott Ecker.
Yes.
Bar none.
So, and very much like Walt, I take control of that narrative where, I'm undefeated in Red River Trivia, for the Disney nights as far as anyone knows, because I don't share if I ever lose. So
let me tell you about the one time I out Disneyed Scott Ecker, which really has become funny to me that Disney has now named their streaming service Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Which is, I was reading Walt Disney's biopic at the Fargo Theater because no one came there to see movies, so I had a lot of time to myself. And they were talking about how Walt used to go and we gotta plus it. You gotta plus it. So meaning, this is good, it needs to be better.
Yeah.
And so I was talking about this at rehearsal, and Scott goes, Walt Disney never said that. And then I took the time, because I'm a giant baby, to put about 20 links on your Facebook about
Exactly.
here's Walt talking about Walt plussing it. And then when I noticed that Disney was naming their streaming service Disney Plus, I thought well, there you go. So they're just slapping Scott in the face.
Teenage arrogance of, no, this person who died 50 years ago never said this one term. The confidence in that.
But that's the thing, right? Is that you have devoted so much study to the works of Disney that I feel like, I'm going to be honest, I felt myself kind of questioning it for a moment to be like, ooh, did I read that wrong? Did I read something else entirely that I attributed to this? Because the biography is something like 700 pages thick. It is just enormous.
I do have to say, I've not heard that term in association with Walt and stories about him anywhere else. So it's not a company line, that they're passing around much.
Until now, when they're like, we'll call it Disney Plus in honor of Walt's, the secret thing we don't talk about very much. We shouldn't have told that biographer about it.
As I'm looking at some potential questions, which I will pepper throughout the episode, they fall into a couple specific types of categories. I mean, some of them are about the theme parks themselves, right? And the history of those theme parks. Some of these questions are deep, deep Disney history cuts that I would be surprised if either of you knew the answers to. And a lot of them are merely questions of what happens in this movie at this time. What does this character say then? I think JJ will be pretty good at that stuff where it's coming from the movies themselves. I don't know how either of you are going to land on some of these historic questions. I'm hoping to stump the two of you.
Doritos invented in Disneyland.
Would you guys like to kick off with one and then you guys can go from there?
Sure. Well, why not, right?
I'm trying to do, some of these are hard. I'm going to throw a really hard one at you guys and see if you can hit it. And if you do, that'll help me sort of gauge the baseline for this. How, and let's start with you, JJ. You'll answer first and then Scott, and we'll go vice versa the next one. How did Walt's brother, Roy, propose to his wife, Edna?
In the back of an Edsel.
Scott?
He brought her back to the small Kansas Main Street community where they delivered papers. And he took her on the paper route, and he kneeled down on one of the doorsteps, and she thought this was funny and proposed to her that way.
Got it. So you're both wrong.
Yes.
Which makes me think that there are definitely going to be questions on here that are objectively too hard to answer.
I went to trivia not too long ago. It was Back to the Future trivia at Pepper's Sports Cafe. And there's one team who got every question right. I have seen each of the Back to the Future movies hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And I don't joke about that. I mean, I watch a Back to the Future movie at least once every week. I've got them on my phone. I love them.
Yeah.
Third one is the best in my opinion. I have so much fun while I'm watching it. Again, my opinion. But the questions they were asking were insanely background specific.
Yeah.
And the team who got everything right, I noticed that the host went and had dinner with them afterwards and enjoyed the pitcher of beer with them. And I'm like, oh,
That's collusion.
I see what's going on here. But I don't think that there's anything fun when the trivia is so hard. There's nothing fun about it.
Well,
right?
and I've written trivia events based on personal knowledge, and then I've done it where someone needs to do SVU trivia, and I'm just Googling, and that's not as... It's not going to be as fun for the
spirit
people.
Of the game.
Yeah.
Did I give you guys the answer?
No.
It was by telegram.
Okay.
Roy Disney proposed to Edna via telegram. So what that does is gives me a good baseline of that's a question too far afield. The next time I interrupt you with a question, it'll be one that I think is on the easier side of the spectrum, and I think I'll be able to gauge difficulty after that.
Is that... There's more than one Roy Disney that's been associated with the Walt Disney Company,
Roy,
right?
O. Disney is the brother. He mentioned the brother, and then his son, Roy E. Disney, also Elias middle name. That's the nephew who was in charge of feature animation.
See, there you go. That's why you've got Scott around. So you've gotten an opportunity to write trivia for this. Yep. Has anyone ever impressed you with their knowledge of Disney trivia when you're hosting it?
No, but I don't think I've hosted it. I've shown up to with the biggest stick up my butt, like, okay, impress me, and I'm
You're like the Simon Cowell.
Yeah, I get the
Disney
response
trivia.
I'm looking for, which is not good.
You Philistines!
Yes.
How dare you? Do you have a top 5 favorite Disney animated movies?
Oh,
Not in any particular order.
Yeah, so for me personally, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which is my favorite movie ever, first one I saw in theaters, Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Beauty and the Beast. After 3, it gets kind of like there's maybe 15 I could rotate depending on how I'm feeling that day. Today I might go Princess and the Frog and Aladdin.
Good choices.
Do you think widely Beauty and the Beast gets kind of short shrift because they followed it with Aladdin and then The Lion King?
No, because nothing's ever going to top the best picture nomination when there were only 5 nominated films.
I also think that at that time, it was getting acclaim from not only film lovers, but I can't remember the reviewer, but who said the best musical on Broadway right now is Beauty and the Beast, the animated one, before they'd even done the stage production.
I'm pretty sure that was the first time I'd seen 3D animation happen in a 2D, in any animated piece.
There's,
the ballroom scene, right?
clock sequence in Great Mouse Detective.
Okay.
Some bubbles in Black Cauldron.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha.
But the first thing where you really noticed,
First one
like,
that I had
the
seen.
camera's
Yeah.
moving around.
What did you say? The Rescuers? No.
Great Mouse Detective.
Oh, I'm sorry, Great
the
Mouse
Big
Detective.
Ben
Right.
sequence.
So Great Mouse Detective, I had seen. I never noticed that. I do remember being completely freaked out by that silhouetted assault that happens at the beginning of the movie, right? I just remember, is it like an old professor or an old man is getting attacked?
Yep.
Is that what's happening?
Toymaker, isn't it?
Toymaker?
Yeah.
That scared the
And by the way,
crap
can
out
we
of me.
call this movie what it's really intended to be called, Basil of Baker Street? And not do the Jeffrey Katzenberg dumbed down, the Great Mount Detective. People don't understand it, you guys. We got to do this. It's a horrible Jeffrey Katzenberg impression, but the guy is so
more
sleazy.
toothy. Guys.
Ugh. That being said, Jeffrey Katzenberg, did help keep that studio budgetly
So here's
afloat.
something I've been thinking of lately. I believe that the Care Bears movie is one of the most important theatrical animated features ever, and I think that there's an alternate history where that's all we ever got because Black Cauldron from Disney failed immensely, and then this cheap, cash grab toy merchandising was the biggest animated feature. So if Disney hadn't gotten their act together with new corporate Hollywood bosses, there's no reason for them to put that much money into Disney or Spielberg to support Don Bluth. I think if those two things hadn't happened, there's no reason anybody should have put money into animation.
I love 2D animation. I am so sad that The Princess and the Frog is the quote unquote last Disney
Winnie the Pooh 2011.
Oh, that's right. Yep. But you remember when they're talking about like this is the last one Disney's ever going to do. It didn't make enough money to really get people excited about doing something like that.
Which I feel like they were setting up like, okay, here old fans, we're trying these again, and then not marketing them.
Disney has a wonderful way of trying to guilt their audience into coming out to the theater, being like, well, you guys wanted a 2D animated movie and we got it for you, so you better come out and you better see it twice and you better get the McDonald's toys, otherwise it's gonna be it's your fault. You're the one who put the headstone on 2D animation. But then even Winnie the Winnie the Pooh movie, they opened it against
Harry
Deathly
Potter,
Hallows?
the final Harry Potter.
What did they think was gonna happen?
I don't know.
I think, to me, Disney is such an interesting company because they've done so much and they've been the leader in so many different things. Theme parks alone. There were things that existed before Disneyland, but nobody did it to the caliber that Disney did, and the ownership and the use of property rights and just making people feel that sense of Americana. At the era when they opened Disneyland, Americana is booming. People are pretending like the 1950s were the best time ever, and in the 1950s it was the settling of the Great West was the best time ever, and they keep chugging into these things. Disney did that better than anybody else. I was 3 years ago. I was at Disney World, and it's just amazing to walk through there. And I did the tour that goes underneath, the all-day behind-the-scenes tour, and that'll blow your mind. Just in the construction of how everything that didn't go well in Disneyland, they said, we're going to fix this for Disney World. For example, and Scott, you correct me if I'm wrong on this, but very close to opening day or opening day itself, Walt saw a cowboy walking through Tomorrowland, and he thought, it's ruined. It's ruined. The world that the person is inhabiting is ruined because this cowboy has to get there because he has to get to the employee restroom. And so they decided when they were going to build Disney World that we're going to build this actually above ground level. And so at any given time, I think you're 25 feet above the actual earth. And it's just a huge series of corridors underneath so that cowboy can essentially walk through, a hole in an old outhouse, go down a set of stairs, and can go to an employee commissary without anybody seeing what they look like at that time. And I think that's amazing. Who thinks of doing something like that?
And that is something that when you're at the parks, you don't see many strings behind the characters are the characters. They're not, lifting off a mask to take a smoke or anything.
They've even gone to the level of in the new Guardians of the Galaxy ride, which used to be the Tower of Terror. You walk in, and then part of the queue line, and this is another thing that Disney was brilliant with, the line that you wait in for up to hours before getting on is just as much a part of the ride as the actual ride experience. So it's setting up a storyline and you get in. They've got an animatronic Rocket Raccoon that gives you an intro, but the Rocket animatronic could break. And if it breaks, there is no way to get people through and to be set for the story that they're about to see. So Disney took the time and money to make it where they could just put a crate over the Rocket Raccoon that's not functioning and then be able to project a screen where it's Rocket looking over everybody, not that he's right there, but he's coming to them via a comm system. So they've got a backup. They've got a plan B. Blows my mind. If you're in a play and somebody gets sick, your best bet is to get somebody on stage with a script who can fill in those parts, or you cancel it.
If you have the budget, which most don't.
Right. And so I think, to me, those are the touches that Disney has excelled at for so many years. And guest satisfaction, they teach it to companies now.
Scott, you'll answer this first. What is the motto for the Rescue Aid Society in The Rescuers?
That's a good question.
I can hear the melody of the song they sing. It's not Never Give Up, Never Surrender.
You're right. It's not that.
Nope, that's Galaxy Quest.
Yes. Okay. Well, I would argue has done more for the
Star
galaxy.
Trek genre.
I believe this is a Disney episode,
Yes.
guys. Let's not contaminate with others.
All right. No, I do not know this.
You're going to pass?
Yeah.
JJ?
Never hurt anyone. No. Well, how about this? Old women are the worst.
What is the motto for the Rescue Aid Society in The Rescuers? We never fail to do what is right.
Okay.
Guys,
I have to say,
guys are letting me down.
I really love Rescuers Down Under. The original Rescuers is one I just can't get into.
Agreed.
I've tried it. Disney's had like a 30-year period where their animated movies all had pacing issues, from Sleeping Beauty to Little Mermaid. It's just there's at least one point where it drags.
You know what? I just said let's talk only about Disney, and I'm going to take us out for a second. Watched an animated film last night, thinking, what is with the pacing here? What is with the timing between characters saying lines? It's as though it were automated. Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Okay.
And there are so many moments where a character says a line, and then there's this weird beat, and then another character says a line. And it's as though it feels almost like a video game cut sequence where it's been translated from Japanese. So all the timing and the language just doesn't fit, just doesn't work. And I thought, these are simple cuts. Like, you could have easily gone in, once you recorded everything, animated everything, you just need to cut 2 seconds out between these things.
Did that follow a joke? Is that like trying to get like a humor rhythm or replicate?
It has the similar rhythm as though it's a pause for a punchline, but it happens in moments where there's obviously no joke happening.
Okay.
So I wasn't quite sure what was going on there, but not Disney though.
No, well, one recent thing that bothers me in animated movie trailers, and even in some Disney ones, where there'll be a lawn moment where nothing happens. So like Maui in Moana trailer jumps into, the big cave, and, Moana's looking over and nothing's happening. And then he says, "I'm still falling." And that seems to be a modern like joke beat where nothing happens.
It's the Homer Simpson. He's staring at you blankly.
Yeah.
And there's a moment there where there's just nothing. It started, I think, around him. Because I remember similar humor type happening when we were of the age when we were in high school, and things were, if it was random, it was considered funny.
Yeah.
And if you would just not understand it for a moment, that would be considered funny. It kind of feels like that.
Ugh, this doesn't sound funny to me at all.
It wasn't. It was a weak movie, which is weird because I love the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
And I love Batman.
Listen, just because you love two things does not mean that they go together.
I'm going to find that out tonight with stovetop stuffing and beef tacos.
I love sleeping naked, and I also love working with youth groups. Those things do not go hand in hand, no matter what.
No
matter any time I chaperone an overnight, I'm never going to be able to sleep as comfortably as I would like.
What if you loved neither of those things, but you loved them when they happened at the same time?
Then this whole podcast would be proof of some. Yeah,
I think my neighbor. So I don't have
a sting operation by Tucker Lucas. 150 episodes just
lured you in, Scott.
Way to Disney. That. I think my neighbor has seen me naked a lot the last 2 months.
Why?
Because I had to take down the molding around my window so I could repair some parts of it.
And you thought, this doesn't require clothes?
Well, and I haven't put the shade back on, but when I get out, I am of the exact height where they are looking down from their main floor window up at the master window in my house, and it's his office. I think he goes to work and he sits there in a chair. If he looks up at the right time, you can definitely see my butt.
Sounds like a great deal of timing on both of your parts.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is like two ships passing in the night.
Exactly.
Do you think one of us is maybe like I'm waiting for that light to turn on? I can see the illumination.
Maybe he doesn't think it's your butt. No.
Good call.
Maybe he thinks it's like an old woman's mask.
2 turkeys. 2 uncooked turkeys through my bedroom.
Is there nothing about your routine that you can adapt for this problem? It has to be your butt.
Honey, look, it's that angry potato sack again.
So my wife wears pajamas, and I said, Jill, why don't we just switch sides of the bed? Because if I'm on your side, I won't have to walk past this window.
You guys have been together for how long, though? Like, you can't uncook what's like.
That's true. The sides of the bed you have.
You've been sleeping on the same side of the bed for so long together.
This is a brand new bed within the last 6 months. I think we can try out some different ideas. It's also a king size bed, and she started sleeping diagonally.
Oh, that's just selfish.
Which, she gets the equivalent of a queen size bed to herself, and I'm still sleeping on the equivalent of a single.
Yep.
Now, the size difference between the two of you, she's the one that needs that.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, somebody recently, my wife was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 35, almost unheard of in the medical community.
That makes her prone to sleeping diagonally?
No, but my friend Phil, in true Phil fashion, goes, I mean, you look at the both of you and you say, which one of these has diabetes? And he goes, they're pointing at you every single time. And he called it nature's cruel joke. So, yeah, best man at my wedding.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to Disney slightly, because you mentioned this, and we've had this conversation before. I'm glad it's getting recorded now.
Yeah.
One of the most tragic stories of Hollywood is Don Bluth.
Yeah.
That man did such amazing things and doesn't get nearly the credit he deserves.
Yeah, he really took a risk at the time. It was unheard of. So Don Bluth, director of Land Before Time, Secret of Nim, and American Tail. So he was...
All Dogs Go to Heaven.
We can keep going. Troll in Central Park, Thumbelina,
Anastasia,
Bartok the Magnificent, Pebble and the Penguin. Of course, that's one I always forget.
Balto? Did he do Balto?
Nope. That was
the mouths look like he did.
Well, yeah, that was so. That was Spielberg's Amblimation, but their first movie was Fievel Goes West, which was so they kept his style.
Yeah,
we've had long conversations about Fievel Goes West. We don't need to get into them on this edition of the podcast. But
I have to say, I've never seen that one.
You've never seen Fievel Goes West? Then you're missing the best one.
Have you seen all four? I've only seen the first.
Yep,
okay.
Because the next one is the Manhattan.
There's Monster of Manhattan Island or something, and Mystery of something.
Yeah, I got
which also maybe Manhattan Island.
And here, this must be a rights issue because I own an American Tail on DVD, but the other three come on separate. There's no like 4-pack you can buy.
Yeah, because one is superior, and the others are just retread of the same theme.
No. Not at all. About how the West was won? What? Are you kidding me? The swan song for Jimmy
The only
Stewart?
thing more disgusting to me than the fact that JJ...
was his last movie, wasn't it?
It was. The fact that he prefers It Goes West is not the most disgusting thing to me. What's most disgusting is it seems that a lot of people agree with him, and I don't understand. I do not understand this.
Viva la Fievel Goes West.
So, JJ, if any sequel, like... to a series that's not originally set in the Old West suddenly makes a U-turn and is like a Western, do you love that one more? Because that's the pattern I'm seeing.
You've got my attention. I can tell you that much. Here's the thing. I don't think that there's another one that's done that other than Back to the Future and Fievel Goes West.
Yeah.
You know?
Racking my brain.
And here's the thing. Both of them did such a
Ballad
great
of Little
way.
Joe. That doesn't count. It's not a feature, but...
I only saw the Jonah and the Whale VeggieTales movie. So Don Bluth is an awesome, amazing guy. He's innovative in his animation style. His storytelling is top notch. He just doesn't get the recognition that he deserves.
And looking back, he had enough chances. It's really weird because we remember him as being this. Remember him. He's still alive. He's still,
still Bluthing it up somewhere.
Yeah, he's still really trying to get that Dragon's Lair movie going.
Still living off of his old glory days, as I'm sure we all would love to be able to. He is at his best when he has a structure of a story to work with or someone to really guide him. So Secret of Nim, I think, is his best movie. As much as that deviated from the book, Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, he still had that story structure. Or as much as Bluth didn't like collaborating with Spielberg on An American Tail and Land Before Time, there was still a strong producer guiding him. When Bluth is on his own, that's when the rails come off, where All Dogs Go to Heaven, Rock-a-Doodle, Troll in Central Park just doesn't have that structure. He really needed to be able to work at a studio like Disney that could be like, okay, you've got skills as an artist. Here's the story. Here's the backbone.
Right. We're going to give you a department to oversee that will be able to make suggestions and tweak on your vision.
Because he's bankrupted multiple studios on his own. And that's sad, but we lost Richard Williams recently, who directed the animation for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You know, he's another one where if there was a studio in place that could have given him some creative freedom, but also the structure to do his own work, we would have seen a finished Thief and the Cobbler.
By the way, shout out to Richard Williams for doing something that by today's standards is impossible. Completing the animation for Who Framed Roger Rabbit is an unthinkable undertaking, considering that you're blending things that were really more or less, a little fun side operation, from the Alice Adventures all the way up. But to do it as brilliantly as he did into that, I mean, it is amazing.
And it still holds up. You look at old CGI and you can see it does not work, but Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it's seamless.
I recently just rewatched a couple scenes from the first Toy Story.
Yeah.
And you even see how primitive 3D animation was then, especially around the mouths, the way the mouths are shaped. And there were moments I caught where weird clipping was going on, or objects would go through each other because they just hadn't built the physics and the texturing for it yet.
And Pixar will say that they started with Toy Story because everything looked plastic.
Right.
They weren't going to do a full feature with people.
Yeah, I listened to a podcast recently which walked through every single Pixar movie, and they said they had to do a lot before they were like, okay, it's time to do people, as it.
And even then, Incredibles is so stylized that it's not. Yeah,
but the texturing was there. I mean, that part of it, the light scatter and things hitting surfaces was there. But there's that uncanny valley thing where the closer you try to get, you think of Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
Yeah,
or even now something as advanced as the cinematics from World of Warcraft when they put out new ones. Those are highly stylized, very textured, very physics. But the closer they get to actual human proportions, the weirder it seems. Because there's still that weightlessness of the physics. There's still that, I don't know, it doesn't connect.
Every time we get a live action director who wants to make an animated feature, I see that in everything with Tintin and Rango, and it's just I
remember
it looks bad.
In the features for The Incredibles, watching Brad Bird go over and over again, the physics from the Jungle Book, when they'd be lifting Mowgli up into a tree and how it looked like he actually had weight to him as they would push it.
Yeah, the squash and stretch principles that the 9 Old Men created.
JJ, you're going to kick us off with this one. This one's kind of shocking me a little bit.
Okay.
You first and then Scott. What is the name of Donald Duck's sister, who is also the mother of Huey, Dewey, and Louie?
Okay, hold on, because I just watched this on DuckTales, and it's Daisy is his girlfriend. Is it not Delilah? Delilah.
Can I steal?
Yep.
JJ's getting close. It's Della.
It's neither.
Dumbella?
Dumbella.
Okay.
Dumbella, spelled Dumbella. Now, I was not aware that they had ever established who his sister was. Does she actually appear, or is she merely referenced?
So in the shorts that debuted Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Donald's nephews, Donald gets a letter saying that she's in the hospital with the boys' father. And it's phrased in this funny way that really sets up what jerks these 3 kids are.
Oh, so they had hospitalized their father.
Yeah. They had done something and made the.
But if her name is Dumbella, it sounds like they're trying to tell you something about her, because that's such a name. Dumb is in there, right there, right front and center.
Well, don't forget, there's someone in the Bible named
Dorcas.
Dorcas.
Yeah.
So
right, and Nimrod, but they didn't have the context for it at the time. But dumb, I'm assuming, was part of the context already when Dumbella was created. Unless Dumbella is a name, I've never even heard that name before. It sounds made up, where they were trying to put the word dumb into a name somehow.
I had my mom is a elementary school librarian, and there's this old book, Are You Dumb? And it was about, are you deaf? And it used it in that way. And I'm sure by the look of the book and the wear and tear, like that was 50s.
Wow.
I can't think of dumb being used as a just colloquial slam.
Yeah. Like, are you,
Since then,
you're
yeah.
dumb. Have you been watching any of the DuckTales, the new DuckTales reboot?
No, and that's something I'm excited for with Disney Plus.
So,
to have a chance to do that.
On a previous episode, I really crapped on that show.
Yeah.
And I still say that the first season of that show doesn't know they don't know if they're trying to placate to me, the fan of the original DuckTales series. They don't know if they're just trying to go off of, we're trying to get new kids in here. Are we trying to get toys? What is it? But something has happened with just the storytelling. And even in the first like TV movie launch that they have for it, there's some funny stuff. Like Donald goes to work for Flintheart.
Okay.
And he has to sit and watch like a new employee video for Glumgold Industries. Yeah. And it is a parody of other, like, you know, like you've chosen to be a henchman. And it's funny. And they really lean into that later. Some of the animation is unfortunate.
And I don't know if we'll see that again in TV animation, the original DuckTales was one of the first attempts to higher budget and really get some quality. Unless it's an artistic statement like Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal, which I watched the first episode for recently. I think that, just assembly line animation is what we're going to get.
I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing some animated pieces that could have been movies, but they said, nope, we want to turn this into a one-off like series. Yeah, especially for Disney Plus's streaming service. Yeah. It just makes sense that we're living in a world where they're going to say, okay, anything that we can do. Yeah. The problem is that live production usually costs less than an animated production, unless you go the cheap route and send it overseas to all be done. But then it starts to look like everything else, right?
Yep.
And so people, they'll be skating that fine line. Disney's, in my opinion, Disney's backbone, what put them on the map is animation.
Yes.
But that no longer is what they are banking on, unless you consider the live action Lion King an animated movie, which it is. Argument.
Yeah, it's weird, and that's a trend in modern animation where the peak seems to be how realistic can we make this? How close to real life? And that just, you lose the fantasy of it that way, and it's just not, I don't know, I'm not a fan of that direction things are going.
Disney seems to say, okay, I imagine there's a room and it's a big long board table.
Yeah.
And they're showing the rough cut of a movie that they're releasing. And the heads of every single department for Disney is there. They're like the toy makers, right? And so they're sitting there and be like, yep, we can easily turn this into a toy. Yep. And then there's someone from Disney Theatrical being like, yeah, I think we could probably turn this into a stage musical in some way. You had someone from the theme park being like, well, we've been looking for something to do with the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea Nemo thing where we can do something with this. And so gone are the days of where you're making just a movie.
Yeah.
It's a property, right? Everything they do now is they're making a property, and what can they squeeze out of this?
I think that's been the way since the late 80s, at least.
They're more known for what they own now than what they have produced originally. So Disney used to mean the movies, and animated their characters that they had created and owned. But now it means everything from Marvel to The Simpsons to all sorts of stuff, ESPN, everything else that they own.
Which is so I had a friend ask me my opinion on how much Disney owns. Is it good? Is it bad? And it's interesting because Disney is the only entertainment corporation that came out of the studio. All of these other movie studios have been purchased by Comcast or Time or merged with Time Warner, Sony, Viacom, and Disney really had to become a corporation to survive. you look at how terrible things were in the early 80s. It's astonishing that they're still around. I think now the optics of buying Fox, just because people joke about Disney owning everything, was kind of bad, but I don't know. There's if they didn't buy it, someone else would have, and it's weird to talk in those terms.
Here's what I think. Well, it's not like they could do any worse than Fox was currently doing with their properties, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I actually just looked. The Marvel buyout was not too long ago from
2008?
like date wise, because it showed up on my Facebook.
I think it was 2008.
Memories.
I think.
2010. It was right before Iron Man 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So when that originally took place, my Facebook post is like Disney's buying Marvel, great.
Yeah, we had
And it was-
arguments about that.
Yeah, and I was like, this is just the worst thing for it. And I was 100% wrong. Same thing with Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
I think they've done a great job in getting Star Wars put together in a structure
Yeah.
that makes more sense.
They saved it. I mean,
Yeah.
they saved Star Wars, the,
And say-
the brand of which was in the toilet.
Yeah.
And say
And
what
still
you...
$1 billion worth.
Right. And they're making movies that are entertaining a lot of people. They may not be entertaining the diehard Star Wars fans, but I hate to be the one to break it to you.
Yeah.
They don't care about your dollars.
Well, it's actually, I mean, but the thing is, it's actually entertaining a ton of the diehard Star Wars fans too. A lot of people that I know who have been Star Wars people since they came out in the 70s, and they're loving the new movies. I think part of it is that when something have such a mass appeal that the people who hate it can't get away from it, and so they're going to do nothing but complain about it. It's like us with sports in this town, right? I have nothing against sports, but because we're bathed in it all day long, and I get kind of sick of hearing about it, I'm gonna push back against it.
Yeah, I guess yesterday was Bison Day, like National Bison Day, and it's like we need a national designated holiday to acknowledge this thing that,
specifically for the
plagues
team
everywhere.
and not actual bison.
Even for the
Yeah.
fact that we shame people who say bison.
Yeah.
They pronounce it the correct way, but we're like, no, it's the bison here. There's at no point was there ever like a university mandate that came out that said, you guys, we're going to pronounce this with a Z instead of an S and just buck against a trend. Now, I also like to remind people too that like Disney's whole studio career has not been all greatness.
Oh no.
Like you could write a biography of Walt Disney called Nearly Bankrupt More Times Than You Can Count.
Yes.
And talk about the fact that there were times, which movie was it where they were pretty far in the process and he scrapped it and started over again? One of the animated films. So The Jungle Book?
Beauty and the Beast got completely redone.
Same thing.
Really?
So
Jungle Book, no, I don't. At least I haven't.
But they
heard that.
were recycling animation cycles though at that point, because there's
Yeah, in the
animation
Dark
cycles
Age,
that show up in Jungle Book that are in other things.
Well,
like
and
Robin
then Beauty
Hood.
and the Beast has one of those at the end where they didn't have time to finish it, so they recycled Sleeping Beauty.
dance.
Yeah. I love every 2 years on Facebook, there's a YouTube video that will circle around pointing out the recycled animation, and people will be up in arms and just like, how could they? And, this proves whatever, point I was making. And it's just, I don't know. People seem averse to figuring out the historical context to whatever made them mad.
But how expensive it was to do that thing in the first place.
Yeah.
I got to assume, even though 3D animated movies are still expensive, but there's got to be something too. If all you used to know was drawing cell by cell on pieces of paper, but now you've got 3D models that you can have them do all sorts of stuff, which also lends itself a lot to a lot of commercialization. So a lot of the same animations of characters will then show up in ads for Pepsi or what have you.
right. I mean, let's face it, the studios are giant R&D departments in some way. And so once you get something that works, you're going to keep it for a little bit, as you should.
Right.
One of the greatest moments of my life was they did an exhibit at the Chicago Science Museum dedicated to Walt Disney because he's got a big Chicago. He's a Chicago boy. And they had one of the multi-plane cameras there and they showed how this thing worked. And if you've never seen this,
It's huge.
It's enormous. I mean, it had to have been 12 feet tall at least.
Yeah.
And so what it was is you put a cell of, let's say, the sun at the very bottom, and then other cells that have different pieces of the single image. And as the camera comes down, the cells kind of move, and it gives this depth of feel that you'd never seen before. Because they said, we want it to look like this person's walking down the road and getting, smaller. And rather than having to figure out the exact dimensions of what it would look like size-wise for every single piece, why don't we just move the background? Which is unheard of, right? In filmmaking, they're like, you can't do that with animation. You can't take something in real life and make it come alive like that. And they're like, yeah, we can. We got it. We took care of it. But yeah, seeing one of those was wild. They also
Can one of your trivia questions be what was the first animated short to use the multiplane camera?
What was the first multi-short to animate the camera with the mustache?
Multiplane camera?
Multiplane with your mustache.
The Old Mill.
Oh, okay.
They also had the painted backdrop for London from Mary Poppins, where they poked little tiny pinholes in it, and then were able to like light up behind.
Is that when you're looking like at the smokestacks and stuff?
Yeah, like in the establishing shot of London at the very, very beginning.
Okay.
And so because of these pinpricks, they could light up certain areas, and it would look like the town was getting dark enough where they're having to, people would light up candles and stuff in their homes. It was seeing those pieces of history. Just are amazing to me. And I love Disney pushes and pushes and pushes, and they always are looking for what the next innovation can be. And you see it in their theme parks. That being said, some of their flops have been huge flops. Like they had a Dave and Buster's style restaurant at one point that was like video games. Do you remember
Disney
what it was called?
Quest?
That's what it was. And I think they opened 2 of them, and before they were like, never mind. This isn't
the kind
working.
of thing though, like where with Amazon it gets so big, it's like let's just start slapping Amazon in different services and see what takes off.
Well,
the Go Network, Disney bought Go when didn't know what the internet was going to be. So if you ever, I remember like an era of video commercials where it was Disney.go.com.
Yep.
That's because they purchased this domain search engine that didn't take off.
Oh God! Well, they had purchased land outside of Philadelphia to build another theme park that was going to be
Disney's America.
And there was only one piece from that thing that actually lived. That became part of it. Was like a carousel style ride where where the theater moves, and someone died tragically on that. One of the operators got smushed between one of the walls, but it had Burl Ives as the voice of this like eagle wearing an American hat, and he's like, "Come on down, folks."
Not only did that poor gentleman have to die,
I believe it was a woman.
Not only did that poor woman have to die in construction, but for a theme park that would never exist.
Right. And that's the thing is Disney is so excited about this, and they're going to, fund part of this giant freeway expansion. And, think of what it's done to Orlando, what it's done to Anaheim. But the people of Philadelphia were like, F to the no. We don't want Disney. That's ridiculous. And pretty much a word of mouth campaign squashed it, and they had purchased land.
That's too bad. I would have loved stories about how they have to like grease the flagpoles at Disney Philadelphia or something. It'd be pretty great. That would be pretty awesome.
Well, I think the Philadelphia Eagles mascot probably would have become this, like the goofy Burl Ives mascot.
So here's my pitch for the next American Disney park.
Oh yes,
they should do like just one of the themed lands in like 4 different states. So it'd be like Tomorrowland, Washington, or Adventureland, Nevada, Frontierland, Texas, or something like that. So they open it gradually, and that way it's less expensive, less takes up less land, but they spread it out.
And then you sell people on like a 4-week-long vacation where you spend 4 days at this park, and then you fly to this park, and then on
States
Disney Airlines.
Pitch, like, hey, we want to be the Fantasyland state.
What would North Dakota be? What could we take over?
I feel like Frontierland is what we're disposed to, and that's the one I would
like
want
a
the least.
Medora type thing, like out there.
Like everything's that.
Maybe we can be the Touchstone Pictures land.
Yes.
It's called Walt Disney, basically Canada.
Yes.
Scott, we'll start with you on this one. I think you two have a good chance of getting this one. Which Disney full-length animated feature was the last one to use a storybook as an introduction in the beginning of the movie? Which Disney full-length animated feature was the last one to use a storybook as an introduction in the beginning of the movie? There's a ton of them.
Yeah. Whose turn is it to start?
You get to go.
Okay. 2011's Winnie the Pooh that I've referenced already.
Oh,
Is that not what your answer
that's
says?
not the answer.
I argued this with Trivia Takeover as well. What is Chicken Little the answer you had?
No,
Where they make fun of the storybook?
no, JJ, it's up to you.
So I guess my Robin Hood is way off.
Your Robin Hood is dead on.
Is that what they're saying?
You took it.
I would
here's the thing.
argue that. Yeah.
Like I concur with Scott. Like I agree because they use it in Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Like it was part of the poster imagery on like the teaser poster, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I wonder when this particular question was written. It may have predated that coming out.
It also depends on by whom as well, because that's one thing I've noticed online about the Disney fanatics is there is no love loss between person A and person B. If somebody thinks that they know what the answer is, they are going to defend it to the possible death. Which is awesome.
I mean, you could say that obviously, literally, Robin Hood is no longer the correct answer.
Yeah.
But you could also say that was a storytelling tradition of their movies at the time that they then ended, and that Winnie the Pooh bringing it back is a callback to a different time.
Yeah.
So as a callback, you can still kind of categorize it differently as like the tradition sort of ended, but now they're referencing the tradition to evoke an emotion.
Right. And at that point, the trivia question gets too unwieldy, and why are we even...
It's like,
why does this matter as a bit of trivia if we have to have all these caveats?
If you didn't say Winnie the Pooh, would you have said Robin Hood?
No, I would have said Chicken Little because they make fun of, the storybook. How many times do we see the storybook opening?
The question would have to be like,
movie.
which movie did a non-self-referential, non-self-aware,
the less sincere, non-callback, would have been Robin Hood.
because even later on, Shrek from DreamWorks will make fun of the storybook opening because he uses it for
So does
toilet paper.
Monty Python does it too in the Holy Grail because they go back to the book from time to time, and eventually it's a gorilla hand that comes in, and they got to rip it out.
When you consider the Disney live action films, what do you think are the worst slaps in the face that Disney has put on screen using existing properties and just trying to say like, well, sorry.
You know, it's tough because it's like I don't know if there was a better Country Bears movie.
Right.
You know, that probably what I think they made the best one you could have with that.
I spoke about that movie with Stephen Tobolowsky, who's in that movie, and he goes, you know, when you look at it, it was quite the technical undertaking.
It is,
They did. They gave us the best possible. I listened to the Country Bear soundtrack once a year.
Yeah.
I remember fondly making out with a girl in the theater to that movie. We were the only two people there. It's good times.
I remember making out during A Beautiful Mind. Anyways,
Really?
yeah. I didn't like that movie, so I made out instead.
Do you remember what the movie
Is that like a
finished?
backup plan you have, like in case
No,
you
it was
don't
my
like
girlfriend
the
at
movie?
the time. It was high school. My girlfriend at the time. We were like, let's go see this movie, and it was boring. And then we were like, hey, we're both here. We could make out, and that's what we ended up doing.
Yeah, if that was Tucker's backup plan for if he goes to a bad movie, he's going to make out, we would have made out during Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
Yeah. We would have disagreed over whether or not to make out during Lady in the Water.
Yeah, I'd be like, get off me, Tucker. I'm loving it.
Which is the movie that Disney refused. You know, because Shyamalan did 4 big hits for them up till that point, and they said
He's
no.
like, ooh, this one stinks.
If you have not read the book, The Man Who Heard Voices,
I haven't. Yeah.
highly recommend it. I forget the name of the author. He was primarily a sports writer. Ended up meeting Shyamalan at a party, and they connected over a few different things, kept in touch. And then eventually he was like, hey, I'd like to write a book about you at some point. I don't know what it would be exactly, but let's figure something out. And he's like, I'm writing this new movie. and you can follow me while I do it, gives this guy unprecedented access. He's there every step of the way. The only caveat being you can't publish this until well after the movie is out.
Yeah.
Didn't censor it, didn't say you got to give me a look at it or anything like that, to his credit.
Yeah.
But the portrait painted of the man is insane, including this writer goes to that dinner meeting with the Disney execs where they had just read Lady in the Water, and they had to find out how they were going to tell him that they weren't going to do it.
Yeah.
Ooh. What you said, the man who hears voices?
The man who heard voices. Phenomenal.
I'll have to add it. Maybe I'll see if it's on Audibles.
I wouldn't be surprised if you start reading it on a Friday and you're done by a Sunday.
Really?
I think you tear it through it pretty quick.
Oh yeah, I love those behind the scenes books like that.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm going to throw one out. I thought Mary Poppins Returns was garbage.
Oh wow!
Yep.
I love Mary Poppins Returns.
I think that they made Mary Poppins such a bee that I couldn't. There's nothing lovable about her at all, and even the Julie Andrews terse version of Mary Poppins still was, lovable. Like when she's singing to the kids, like it's loving, Versus this woman is trying to explain that, like, don't worry, your mom's not dead. She's just been misplaced. That's all it is, kids. Don't worry about it. I also think that the worst thing that Disney has ever served to me in something where they've guaranteed me my money was Inspector Gadget. Now, the follow-up sequel gets it way better than the Matthew Broderick with French Stewart, because they at least own up to the fact that, like, you're not supposed to see Claw's face, right? Like, he's supposed to be kind of this faceless baddie with just, like, the claw.
Inspector Gadget's an interesting one because I was 8 when that came out, and that was like a big, collected all the McDonald's toys and, saw it like twice in theaters, bought it on video. So I saw it, 50 times in a year that way. Like now, objectively, I admit it's not great, but.
And Dabney Coleman's in it.
Yeah.
Sherry O'Terry, which means like, oh, this might not be that good.
See, I have fond memories of Sherry O'Terry because of that.
Who calls me Evil Gidget behind my back? See, I can quote the Disney's Inspector Gadget. And I just saw somewhere that they're trying to work on a new version of Inspector Gadget. And
I don't see the need. I don't know what.
In a world so driven by apps and gadgets that we already have, it doesn't seem as, you can buy a personal submarine online for $40,000.
Can we just stop and acknowledge that Kellyanne Conway referenced Inspector Gadget like 2 years ago when like the Trump was complaining about the microwave being tapped, and she said he's not Inspector Gadget, and everyone is like, do you think Inspector Gadget inspects gadgets?
It's like
Inspector Gadget's repair.
I'm surprised that there wasn't at one moment where there literally was like someone from the press corps who was like da 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 inspector, and like sings the theme song to her so that she can be like, what you're referencing, right? Go Gadget, go da 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 da. You right? You saw that show, right?
I feel no soul. I feel like we're going to have 15 years of entertainment just based on this administration. The Space Force show that Netflix is getting. Like, I'm sure that pitch meeting was amazing, and like by the time we get it, we're not going to want it.
Right. And that is, I think, part of the hard rub of entertainment is that you need to produce stuff so fast. I think it's one of the reasons why people are really into Saturday Night Live right now, right? Because something can happen on a Wednesday and it's being lampooned on a Saturday.
Which I would argue, though, that, so when SNL started, the only take they needed on the president was him falling down.
Yep.
Now we get so much information constantly that I think the big, like, for as lauded as SNL was for their take on Trump initially, like, they have not changed their tactic at all. And it's just, we're immune to it, and we know where it's going. Like,
well, they have to put him in more and more over the top, ridiculous situations rather than just, this is the Oval
defaming
Office.
Him at this point.
Right. He's so oversaturated as it is. We're so sick of him in all facets that it's even hard to laugh at him anymore. Cause it's like, I just don't care anymore. I'm too depressed. This is great that you guys lampooning him, and we should always lampoon those in power. But Yeah, the edge is gone.
Have you guys seen the movie Long Shot with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron? So Bob Odenkirk in that movie, even though they're taking shots at Trump with him being like trying to use the political background to, again, entertainment career, like I was so relieved that Odenkirk wasn't doing an impression of him.
Agreed.
That they took their shots, but he was still Bob Odenkirk, and that allowed me to enjoy the movie. I was so thankful for that.
When it comes to presidential comedy of the modern era, I don't think anybody took a bigger swing for the fences than Matt Stone and Trey Parker, where they had prepped 2 pilot episodes, depending on if it was Al Gore who was elected president or George Bush, so that the day after the election, they could air either That's My Bush or I can't remember what the Gore title was, and knew that they had to have like 2 or 3 episodes written and ready to go.
Pretty sure they did the same with Obama and McCain as well. I'm pretty sure.
Did they have an Obama
I
show?
believe they did. Not like a separate show outside of, but they had
for
episodes of South Park that would have addressed who had won, or maybe it was Romney. I'm not sure. One of Obama's 2 elections, they did the same thing.
Well, and I'm talking about the sitcom they created for Comedy Central that was a
That's My Bush,
standalone sitcom where it was George Bush living in the White House. It had
See,
nothing to do
I
with
didn't know
South
that
Park
they had made a Gore version of that as a pilot. That's interesting.
because they wanted to be they wanted to be ready no matter. They said, we know we're going to lampoon the president. We don't care which one it is, but we need to be prepped and ready for it.
Yeah.
Do you remember the show Little Bush? That was a Comedy Central who had it? Or was it just
it's Comedy Central. I didn't see it, but I remember it being announced.
It was a little tiny George Bush in elementary school, and like Condi was there, and a little Dick Cheney and a Jeb, who like Jeb's whole bit was that he was so incredibly like stupid that he would like eat stuff like a porcupine, and he'd be like good, like a caveman.
So in Confetti, which was the senior, junior and senior sketch show at Fargo South, my friend Sam Christensen and I wrote a running gag of Lil Hitler. Where the concept was Neville Chamberlain would have been like the worst principal ever, because he just like, okay, don't do it this time, or I'll let you take this country, but just don't. So we had, Lil Hitler, Lil Eva Braun, Lil Stalin.
Did that make it to the stage?
It did.
It did. Wow.
Yep.
Congratulations. You're ahead of your time with your satire.
We were after Lil Bush. That was
so you just we were like
rip them off.
We're gonna take this and we're gonna take it to the next level.
Yes.
Interesting. So let's talk briefly a little bit about improv too, because you're somebody who loves the art of making things up out of nowhere. When you what drives you to improv? What do you like about it?
I just like that in the moment collaboration, and it's the people you've gotten to know and worked with and the audience, and there's just this instantaneous energy and feedback, and it's just this really specific energy you can only get from that.
I'll take it a step further. My favorite part of improv is the fact that the audience is a part of the show. Yeah. It is not something where you just sit and watch. You are involved from start to finish. Yeah. Even when you don't raise your hand or volunteer or throw out suggestions, you're involved just by what you react to.
Yeah.
And I can't think of another medium where the show drastically changes depending on direct audience feedback during the show. I had so much fun doing Santaland at Theater B last year, and I know that it's my improv background that allowed me to do things like react to the audience. I remember a day where people showed up 10 minutes late, and I said, all right, everyone, we're going to just, hold on 1 second. And I went up to them in the crowd, and I explained what was going on in the show, and I'm like, did I miss anything? And a woman yells out, you love One Day at a Time. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I throw that out there, and I'm like, so these people are as invested in what's going on as I am. And I thought that was a rush. It's the closest thing to improv I've ever experienced in traditional theater. So it was a good time. We did The Underpants together.
Yes, which Tucker directed.
Yep. And that was a lot of fun.
It was.
I had a good time in The Underpants. Yep. There's a scene where Scott's character has a whole bunch of sausage in front of him, and I keep eating off of his plate during that show, which I always love because I'd get to eat sausage during the show. Like, it was a real win.
Yeah.
Your character, was he a hypochondriac?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. A hypochondriac closeted Jew.
That's right.
Because it was 1910 Germany.
Yeah.
And that was the big running joke where you kept looking at my character and were uneasy. And I had to assure you it was Cohen with a K, not a C.
Yeah.
I just realized in this conversation, the 3 shows I've done at Theater B all involve characters who have to wear suspenders.
Yeah.
I wore them in Hand to God. I wore them in Underpants. And I wore them in Santaland.
Real theme with you. Your pants need to get hiked up.
Always got to have hiked up pants.
It's interesting. So speaking of the underpants, so I'm directing Lash Schwartz at Theater B right now, and Jacob Harchie is playing a character who is always at a telescope. And I realized that in the underpants, he played a scientist who was always at a telescope.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
So see, it just all, if you're a real Theater B fan, you'll notice these things and you'll be able to point them out as things go on. Yeah. Is this the first show you've directed?
At Theater B. Yep. I've directed other things.
And so what makes the Lash Schwartz fun for you to direct?
It's a great script, and then great cast, and it's the Theater B stage.
Really killer cast.
Yeah. Which, speaking of those connections, every main stage show at Theater B I've been in, I've got someone from those casts in the Last Schwartz.
Oh, yeah?
So Mikey Sunneram was in Almost Maine with me, Mary Cochran in Dead Man's Cell Phone, Jake Harchie in The Underpants, and Claire Lynch in Art of Bad Men.
Oh, that's
I didn't
fun.
direct any of your Almost Maine scenes, did I?
No, that was Missy Teeters.
Missy did. Okay,
Yes.
that's right.
And as we get ready to start wrapping this thing up, let's go with this. If you could tell people out there one thing about the Disney history, the lore, the myth, whatever you want to do, that you feel gets overlooked, what would it be?
I feel it has to do with Walt himself, where if you look at Disney history, the things that succeeded were what Walt cared about the most. So when he was pushing things like sound and color and the animated shorts, the quality of the animation as far as they could, they were unparalleled. And then the first 5 animated features is probably the best run of movies in all of Hollywood, because that's when Walt had the most at stake. He had the most at risk, and he was determined to make it work. And you would follow that with the true life adventure documentaries, television, Disneyland, Mary Poppins. And, Walt himself, ambition-wise, was getting to a point where experimental prototype communities of tomorrow was where his heart was. So I really, it's a shame he died so young, because I have no idea where he could have gone.
So we'll end this episode with one last trivia question.
Okay.
Let me just pull this back up here again. And we started with Scott last time, I believe, right?
Pongo.
Correct. So I guess we're done.
All right. Good.
No. Here we go. So JJ, we'll start with you. Before Mickey Mouse, what Disney character was suggested to be the Sorcerer's Apprentice in Fantasia?
So it's not before Mickey existed.
Correct.
So we're not talking about one of those earlier creations. I'm going to guess, based on the mass chaos, it was Donald Duck.
You?
Dopey.
Scott has it. He's correct.
Dopey, huh?
Dopey was
Also animated by Fred Moore.
Oh, see?
I guess it makes sense because Dopey and Mickey would have similar would have similar dimensions too.
Yep. The robes.
It makes sense to go with Mickey. Why would they go with Dopey?
He does. I mean, he was the breakout, and for a movie where they don't speak, Dopey doesn't have to rely on speech. So
as I was going through those trivia questions, there was another Fantasia related one, which was Fantasia is the answer to the question. So it's spoiler alert, but the question was, what Disney animated feature film only released to 14 theaters and why? And it was Fantasia, because at the time of the war, most theaters didn't have the ability to do the complicated sound setup. So only 14 theaters could play it.
Have they done Fantasia screenings with live where they like mute the soundtrack and have a live studio?
I think
or
so.
like a live orchestra?
I never hear about them because they don't do those here. So.
Right. I drove down to the cities and saw Jurassic Park live where they did the score to Jurassic Park. They over it. It's cool to see something like that live.
Yeah.
But, well, Scott, it's been a real pleasure having you here.
Thank you very much. This was great.
If people want to find you on the internets, are you available via social medias?
I am. Could friend me on Facebook. I need to up my social media game.
Yeah,
so
you're not tweeting at all?
No, I got off Twitter. I realized I still read tweets from people that I like their takes on things, but I got so frustrated in responding to someone. I'm like, this is not a valid mode of communication. It just...
I saw Scott shut down a heckler once in the most, like... I've never seen somebody not have a moment where they just have this like, oh, what? And then say something witty. It was the guy's, this guy goes, I remember my first beer. And it was seamless. It was so good. It was so good.
I don't remember that one.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that one like there's no tomorrow. And I remember you shutting down somebody at a line bender show too, where that's the thing is you're in the moment. You're not thinking about the next thing that you're going to do. You are concentrating on your relationship with the audience in that exact moment. And that's
remember so one where there was a table who was talking through the whole show, and we got assignments for the dating game or something, and a guy yells out, "What did she say?" And she said, "Pay attention," and that was that.
Yeah, that is. I mean, you might have a title for this podcast right there. She said, "Pay attention."
Yeah.
Scott Ecker, thank you very much for coming on JJ Meets World. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomoorhead.com. That's livefargomoorhead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJMeetsWorld and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. When I was young, my family went to Disney World, and I remember one of the coolest things about Disney World was I wasn't the chubbiest kid there, and that felt great.